All right, guys, we got a very easy topic tonight. A 3-month championship blueprint, no big deal. But if there's one guy who can do this for us, it's Jonathan Stokke. That's why I have him on. Every time he's come on, he's given a great presentation. Awesome coach, awesome guy. Uh, got a great podcast, Baseline Intelligence, and we also have some great people already on. We have two legends on, John. We have Tom Nordstrom, who's in his car, and then we have Scott and Sharon Levy are here. So that's all we need. But I'm sure we'll have more too. So how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. 3 months to I forget what it was. Transform your game. So 3-0 to 3-5, 3-5 to 4. So we'll have 3-0s going to 5-0 by the end of 2025. Easy, no problem.
No big deal. Very, really easy. Um, so first of all, let's talk a little bit about your coaching, so people know you played at Duke. Now you're working. I think you work with high performance juniors, and now you're starting to get into also helping a lot of adults as well, right?
Right. So played at Duke. When I left, I knew I wanted to be a coach. So I was at an academy for 2 years. I coached the women at Wake for 2 years. Then I went back and coached the men at Duke for 10 years, which I cannot believe was actually that long. And then when COVID shut down that last season, I moved to Charleston. And I just work now. I would say I work with motivated players. So I work with a few pros here and there. I work with a couple good juniors. And I would say now mostly I work with adults. And I have found that adults are the most passionate, and I'm loving it. So a lot of my best juniors have actually gone off to school, and I haven't replaced those juniors. I've just replaced them with motivated adults.
I love that you say that, because I was helping at this high performance program with some really, really good coaches, some really great players. And I was saying, I'm telling you, the adults that watch online stuff or listen to podcasts, they are the best students. They are so just focused. Like they try harder than any junior I've ever coached. It's like incredible. Speaking of that, an awesome player and passionate player. This is Marianne Vaughn, and she was actually the one who said, "You've got to have Stokke. You
Oh, wow.
have
And
to.
she got
You
here right
have
on
to."
time.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. All right, and then this guy, Michael Rogers, really improved this game a lot. He loves your podcast, and he thinks so much about tennis that he's created his own app, which we will be giving away probably in a couple of weeks at TennisCon, where it's called Match Recall. So it's for passionate players. After the match, they can really, take some great focused notes on their app, so they know what to improve on, which I think is really, really important. So. All right,
That's awesome.
let's get into this, guys. So, guys, as you're watching this, if you have questions, also think about maybe some of your own goals for next year, or even in the next couple of months. What some of your stumbling blocks, and we will maybe try and help you too with a 3-month plan. So, if you'd like a little 3-month plan, Jonathan and I will hopefully cook something up for you. So, yeah, kind of tell us what you think is important for most players. Are like, in the next 3 months, I just want to go all in. I want to get better. I want to hit my goals. I want to get to the next level. What should they do?
So the very first thing that I would ask that player, if someone came to me and said, "Hey, my wife is she is very detail oriented. She always reminds me that a month is not 4 weeks. It's 4.5 weeks. So I would say we have 13 weeks to improve. And one of my first questions there would be, how many days a week are we going to be able to get on court? Like, that's very, very important for what I would say we could accomplish, or what drills or what avenues I would take to help you improve. If you can only get on the court twice a week and we have 25-ish practices, we can still get better. It's going to be less than if we can do 3 or 4 times a week. So everyone's got different lives, different schedules, different responsibilities. Obviously, the more time you can spend on court, the more you can transform your game, right? So
Yeah.
That's question number one. And I was actually just listening to Mark Kovacs, and he dropped a great line where he said, if you try to work on everything, you'll end up working on nothing.
Yeah.
And so if I said, okay, we've got 3 to 4 times a week where we will be on court, then I would say we've got on court, we've got our conditioning, and we've got mindset stuff. And if we were able to do 3 or 4 days, I'd say we can probably pick 2 topics in each category. If we were only going to do once or twice a week on court, I'd say let's limit that to one thing. one shot, one mental cue, one physical thing you're trying to improve, and go, let's just get good at those 3 things so we can see improvement instead of looking at my second serve, my first volley, my return, my backhand slice. And you go, okay, if we spend one day on all those things, we're really just going to be treading water and running around in a circle. So that's kind of the first place I would start, is how much time do we actually have and how many on-court practices do we actually have?
I have a question for you. With focusing on 1 to 2, 3 things max, would you lead more with a strength, like, hey, this is pretty good, let's get this even better because this will win you matches and you're so close to already kind of being amazing at this? Or would you say, man, that's a big weakness, people are going to pick on that, and you're probably losing your matches because they see that and they're just eating you alive with it? Or is it case by case? What do you think?
Everything will always be case by case. Generally speaking, I'd say like 98% of the time, anyone who follows my content knows that I'm probably going to focus on the main ways that you are losing, and I'm going to get you to stop losing. So, I mean, it's very difficult. If you said, I want to learn how to hit more aces, I mean, how many aces is anyone capable of hitting, period? There's a ceiling on that. But there's no ceiling on how many times I see people double faulting or just missing ground strokes in the net from behind the baseline. They can do that 50 times in a match. And I'm like, hey, let's take it from 20 net misses to 10. That's 10 points we're getting better. So I just feel like that piece of the pie is much, much bigger. And I also think it's a much simpler process to learn how to stop doing bad things than to start doing incredible things. So
I like
that's kind of where my mind drifts. And that's like my coaching philosophy.
Well, I think you probably had a lot of people on board when you say, hey, let's just stop losing. Everybody's like, okay, I'll take that.
I mean, basically tennis is losing back and forth. We did a drill the other day and we played a point. And I said, at the end of the point, whoever lost it, I just want you to say, did you lose it to your opponent, or do you feel like they beat you? Right. And the ratio, I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was like 24-6. People were like, I lost that. Like, I don't really feel like they did anything. I just messed it up. And I'm like, that's probably pretty standard across the board. So now think of all the ways that you're losing. Oh, I'm missing the net all the time. Okay, let's aim higher. Boom. Problem solved. We're already better just because you've shifted your target, which anyone can do in about 8 seconds. If you have the discipline. So that's to me the quickest path to improvement.
When you're watching people play and make mistakes, how much you think is just simple, just like not being aware, like, oh, I'm missing a net and aim higher, versus they just seem to play maybe so tight and nervous and are just inhibited in the things that they could do, where when they practice, they seem to do those things a lot better?
It could be a mixture of both. I tend to think a lot of the mistakes made are mental, like tactical, where they're picking their target. And I think there's also an inherent, if you're picking a small target or you're hitting at a speed that deep down you can't really be consistent at, of course you're going to be nervous. Like, why wouldn't you? Like, it's a risky, like you're gambling. If you're hitting at a speed where you're very consistent and you're picking a very smart target, I would actually feel very loose. Because I'm like, man, I'm already doing it. Like, I have so many good things going on before I hit the ball. I could strike this ball like a C- and still make it. So that's a very comforting feeling, as opposed to I'm picking a small target in the corner and I'm trying to hit fast and I'm a 3.5 and I know I can't really do it. Hell yeah, I'd be nervous. You probably should be. So I do think those two things kind of go together a little bit.
Absolutely. All right. I also want to say hello to Christine. Acknowledge that you're there, Christine. She has come out to our Cincinnati masterclass a bunch of times and is always on our live streams as well. And we appreciate you being here. And guys, if you're just tuning in, because I see we're almost at 50 now, we're going through a 3-month champion blueprint. And also, if you yourself are watching this, go, man, I'd like Jonathan to help me a little bit. I've got this tournament coming up, or I have some goals next year that I want to accomplish, and I don't quite know how to go about it. We can maybe do a little mini case study for you. So, maybe Scott, some of our veterans, just even if you think you don't need help, leave a cool comment so we can have something good to share with everybody. So anyway, we'll be looking for your comments. And so that was kind of step one. What is the next step?
So the next thing, and I've found this with a lot of my players, is they have no idea what they need to work on or where the bulk of their points are being lost and won. I love asking people, how do you win points? And it's just always just the most random answer. I can tell they're just kind of grasping at things.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, obviously, it's because my opponent is missing. Here is how that happens, right? And then
Yeah.
how do I lose points? Oh, I know I'm making backhand errors in the net from this part of the court. So the very first thing we have to do is we have to have 3 or 4 matches that count where you actually felt some sort of pressure. And we have to have those on video, and we have to chart them. We have
Wow.
to. What is actually happening? I do like hearing how people
Let
feel.
me stop you right there. So when you
Yeah.
say this to people, we've got to chart a match, we got to video a match. Like, what is normally the reaction? Are most people like, okay, no problem? Or are they like, what? What are you talking about? Like, I'm scared to death now. How do
I
people
think I
handle
think
that?
the reaction is similar. Like when my doctor's like, "Oh, you got to eat more vegetables and eat a little less sugar." And I'm like, "Oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to do that." And then
Mhm.
I find they just end up not sending me video and not doing it. But they're like, "Yeah, that idea makes sense. It's just
Right.
it takes extra effort and follow through." That's
Right.
usually the feedback I get.
Right. We have a good question. How do you chart a match? Can you quickly explain what you're mostly looking to put down on paper that you can go over your students with?
Yep. So I would explain my process, which everybody probably has their own simple thing. I watch the match. I might have an app. I think it's called Eye on Court. Press 3 buttons every point. It's super easy. It keeps track of the basic things: my first serve percentage, my win percentage, my errors, whatever. But then I will go back and watch the match and go, okay, where were my errors happening from? I made 20 forehand errors. I made them going down the line. I made them when I was standing in the deuce court. I will try to get very, very specific, and I'll watch a match back 3, 4, 5 times, because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, you're totally obsessed. You're the totally obsessed
Yeah.
tennis player.
Yeah.
I mean, the more you put into it, the more you will get out of it. So if I
Yeah.
go, oh, I'm making return errors, that's good to know. I should practice my return.
Yeah.
It'd be better if I knew if I was making forehand return errors and if they were coming in the deuce court and they were coming off second serves and I ended up missing them in a similar spot. That's
Mhm.
going to be very easy for me to be specific with what I need to work on.
Mhm.
So I love the dog, by the way.
The
Amazing.
dog is like, he's every second going, "Arr." He's
Yeah,
like
I
not
can bring
feeling
my
this
dog. I
guy.
can bring my dog up here too if you want.
Yeah.
But so we need an accurate assessment of what's happening, and I do appreciate when people tell me what they feel. I feel like my forehand's letting me down. That really helps me understand the person. It gives me zero insight into your actual game,
Mhm.
because from the most part, when people tell me what they felt happened in a match and I watch it back, it's not even the same. I have no idea what they were feeling or watching, because it doesn't make sense to what I saw. But I
Mhm.
do like hearing their thought process because it helps me understand them as a player a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. I like what you said too. You would watch a match back at least 3 or 4 times minimum to really understand what's going on. And it reminded me of one of my favorite little documentaries I saw. It was on Facebook. I'm not sure if it's still there, but you guys might want to try and look it out. It was called Tom versus Time. It was about Tom Brady. I mean, that guy studies so much film and I mean, he's seen every scenario possible, succeeded in every single thing he's ever done, and he is still just like a hawk watching video over and over and over again. Okay, so here's a let's see if we can do anything with this. Sharon says she cannot get her ground strokes to go where she wants them to go, and it's impacting her mentally. Do you have any like quick wins for her that without obviously seeing her play? I mean, that will help you a lot more too. But
Yeah.
uh,
Okay. So first of all, I understand that nobody hits the ball where they want. So I've never spoken to Novak Djokovic, but unless he's intentionally aiming in the net 20 times in a match and aiming wide 25 times and aiming deep of the baseline 15, 20 times, and also aiming on the service line on big points, he does not hit the ball where he aims. He
mhm.
hits the ball closer to where he aims than, is it Sharon? Than
Yeah,
Sharon does, right? But once you accept that and you don't feel the pressure to always feel like your control is incredible, that can free you up. Number one, just being like, oh, no one does, right?
yeah,
The
yeah.
second thing is, and I've learned recently that I really have to stress the word I'm using here, is that's why I like people aiming at a very safe spot on the court. I did not say hit it to a safe
Yes,
spot on the court.
yeah.
So if I say, hey, Sharon, you're struggling with your ground strokes, how about we aim 1 yard off the center of the court, cross court? And
Mhm.
she might say, well, but I don't want to hit it there. And I would say, don't worry, you're not going to hit it where you're aiming. You just
Yeah,
told me you.
yeah.
Now, anywhere that ball goes could end up being a very good result, or at least an average result. And that's awesome. And so then you quit stressing out so much and going, well, it didn't go exactly where I want. Well, good thing I'm so smart and I picked such a smart target that now that doesn't really matter. And then if
Mm-hmm.
I want to just keep leveling up my game, I take lessons from Pete or I take lessons online, whatever it is, and I'll get my strokes better over time.
Mm-hmm.
But that is where picking a smart target can really alleviate that pressure.
Absolutely. All right, what about there's another. You guys are already coming. Keep the good questions
I love
coming,
it.
by the way. You guys are crushing it already. What's a good ratio of practice matches to tournament matches? I feel like I play too many tournaments over practice matches.
It's a good question. I don't think there's a correct ratio. I think it's also dependent. I mean, it's a recreational sport, so it's what you like to do. Personally,
Yeah.
I like to play.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're like, hey, I'm going to go play tournaments, I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Like if
Yeah.
every tournament is life or death,
Yeah.
that's probably an issue. But some of the tournaments might be, hey, I'm going here. It's fun. I got the juices flowing, but deep down, I want to work on my serve and volley or my heavy forehand, and I'm going to try my ass off to win. But doing those things, and then one tournament might be your club championship that you've been looking forward to forever, and that one might feel like an all-in type of thing. But if it was me, I just like playing real matches because also
Mm-hmm.
that's the realest feedback. I mean, I know when I play practice matches, that can help, but I'm not nervous.
Yeah.
So, I mean, whatever happens there is not fully the information from a practice match is not quite as realistic as the information from a live match. So, there's no right answer. If you have to travel a ton for tournament matches and you just want to play practice, you can still get good doing that. But I would leave that up to the player and what they like to do.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Well, when we think about the 3 month championship blueprint, though, do you have kind of a general uh, periodization thing that you like to do with players as you get them match tough and match ready for maybe their biggest tournament, their biggest season? In the beginning, is it more like, hey, we're working on things, and when we play points and matches, I don't want you to worry about winning. Where as you get closer, you kind of going, okay, I want to put some pressure on you today, dude. I want to see what you're made of.
Yeah, I think as we get closer, obviously you want to play more points and feel like you're match tough and you're comfortable with that environment. But I would also kind of be going depends on the player, but maybe on a 1 or 2 week loop where it's like, okay, let's say Sharon, we're working on forehand consistency. That's our one thing on court. We're working on some type of footwork thing off the court, and we're working on something mentally, maybe for her breathing and staying relaxed. Okay. And we do that for 7 to 8 days. And we're like, okay, now we're going to play 2 relatively serious practice matches and we're going to chart those and see if we've gotten better.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to reevaluate is it working? Cool. We're on the right track. Let's keep doing it. Or, man, it didn't really lead to the type of improvement. I would want to keep touching base every 7 to 10 days on a
Yeah.
loop. And then maybe that last month before a tournament, we go, okay, now we want to maybe take away one drilling day and add a match in there because we want to feel like we're in the flow of playing matches.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. I really like how specific you are with you're going to work on this on the court, that off the court, and it all sounds good. And I'm sure everybody's going, yes, I want to do that. But then they might not have a Jonathan Stokke to go to the court who's going to like put them through that. Now, you as a player who got to Duke, like, did you find something that worked for you to keep yourself accountable instead of like hearing all these good ideas fly in and then out? You're like, I never actually did it. I heard these awesome podcasts. Did Was there something that you could do to tell everybody like, okay, this is how you actually get this stuff done, though, to where you're just not going to listen to another podcast and go away and not do any of these good ideas?
That's a really good question. I had a guy on my podcast maybe like a year ago or 2 years ago, and it was a habit guy. He wrote
Hmm.
a book called The Habit Mechanic, and it's all about how, my favorite thing is when a player misses a shot and then looks at me and says, "Oh, I know." And I'm like, well, clearly you didn't know because they just made the mistake. Like it's
Uh-huh.
obvious you didn't, but they do know the concept. They just don't know how to act on it. And
Yeah.
I know I should do these stretches on my own, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of that he was saying comes down to habit. So it's learning how to
Hmm.
take I know to I do.
Mm.
And so some of that can be in the habits. I also, this might be a controversial hot take, but like for me, I do things I want to do. So
Hmm.
I want to win hard courts and get into the US Open.
Mm.
Guess what? That's a big goal. I've
Yeah.
got to go serve on my own 4 days a week. It's not, I don't have a choice. If I say I want that, that is what it costs. And I'm not even sure that I'm going to get it, but that is the minimum. So I felt like a lot of the things that I did off the court, I never had an option to
Yeah.
not do it. But that's because
Yeah.
I really wanted what I was chasing. With my golf game, I'd like to shoot a 65. I'm not going to go out and practice my putting every night because I really don't care if I shoot a 65. I prefer it, but I don't need it. And so I do think that's a good question for people to ask yourself, like, how badly do I actually want this improvement?
Mm-hmm.
And if you really want it, I don't think you're going to have to fight yourself too hard to do these things off the court.
Okay, good stuff. What did you want as a kid when you were playing tennis? Do you remember some of your
It's
big?
a great question. I never wanted to be a pro ever.
Mm.
It never, even when I was doing very well, and even when we got to the US Open and like I got a taste of it, I was like, like I'm just gonna go to school. And then I figured I'd be out of tennis. And then ironically, I'm coaching like my whole life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I just like competing. I love anything it is. And so tennis ended up being something that just compared to other sports I liked more, but I just wanted to go out and win.
Yeah.
And I wanted to play. And I wasn't really going like, what am I working towards? It was always just whatever the next level is, just because
Yeah.
you're competitive. Oh, I'm winning
Yeah.
my local state tournament. I want to win a Southern tournament. Oh,
Uh-huh.
now I want to try to win a national tournament. Oh, now I want to try to win an ITF. And I want to see if I can win a low-level pro thing when I'm a 17-year-old. I just had a competitive itch to go out and perform and see how good I could be. And I never really had some end goal in mind other than going to college, where I was like, then I've made it if I get there. There was never really that thought for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Was there one or two accomplishments that you look back at and go, those are the best things I did as a player?
It's a great question. I'm proud of my doubles record. So, you got the 12s, the 14s, the 16s, and the 18s. Rajiv and I never lost at national hard courts. We went 19-0 at Kalamazoo, and that's the one that got us in the US Open. And then national
That's
clay
amazing.
court, and then national clay courts, which was the month before. I won it 3 of the 4 years I played it. I played it all 4 years with a different partner. And the 1 year we didn't win it, we lost 7-6 in the third in the finals. So I was really close to winning all 7 that I played with 5 different partners. And I was always like, I feel like that shows that I'm a solid doubles player. I can do it with lots of different styles. I can do it on different surfaces, and I can do it over a 4-year stretch. I'm definitely very proud of that record.
That's great. That is great. Okay. We're on a roll. Guys, keep commenting, keep asking questions. What's our next step?
So, once we take video and we go, okay, let's say I know that you're making 15 of these forehand errors or 20 of these forehand errors, right? Then we would come up with a plan, go, hey, is this technical or is this mental? Right? And technique definitely takes longer to fix than mental. So I think earlier you said, oh, someone, if they're missing in the net, like a lot of times, like I tell them to aim higher. And I have a guy in Atlanta actually who I coach online. He's always like, I can't believe I pay you for that. But I'm like, it's really not too much more complicated than that at a base level. Getting topspin and having the ball go in faster, there are technical elements to that. But, if you were missing ground stroke after ground stroke in the net, I don't know many people who miss lobs in the net.
Yeah.
Right? They know how to swing higher. They know how to aim higher instinctively. Now, they might not know how to get spin, which might scare them. And that can illuminate what the real problem is, which is the racket face is open. And they're worried that when they hit high, it's not going to drop. Okay, now we know the actual problem. Yeah. But how about we solve the first one, which is you just keep hitting ball after ball in the net. So we would kind of figure out what each person has. I came up with some general things that maybe most people are dealing with. Obviously, points are lost, which means people are missing, right? And we were talking right before we come on here. I would love people to become obsessed with making balls. I find most people are obsessed with hitting faster. I want to add shot. I'm obsessed with adding all these different types of shots. I don't hear many people coming to me being like, you know what I want to do? I just want you to make me a wall. And I think when people hear that, I'm guessing here, they're visualizing slow. And that very well might be because you might not be able to hit fast and be inconsistent.
Yeah.
Like that's reality. Like 3-0s can't hit that fast. When I think about being consistent, I still hit a pretty fast ball, maybe 60, 70 miles an hour. And I'm going to have to hit closer to the middle because I don't play as much anymore. I'm not saying hit slow. I'm just saying I want you to become obsessed with hitting consistently. And if depending on your level, it may be slow. But it also could be like pros hit the ball pretty fast, and some of them are rocks. Like, who's it? Gilles Simon? I mean, he's a backboard, but I don't think anyone thinks he hits slow. So again, that's like a word that I would try to make sure I'm very clear on is consistency does not mean slow. It does not mean pushing, but I know it sounds dumb, but like you have to make the ball.
Yeah.
So I want you
Yeah.
to hit as fast and as quality and as deep and as angled as you'd like, as long as you can make it.
Yes. I want to give, first of all, I want to give a shout out to one of my students, Ruth, who's over in Europe now playing like the senior tour over there.
Sick.
And she was going through just kind of a rut because I was teaching her exactly what you are kind of saying, but then it got her so tentative. And I'm like, Ruth, like you have good strokes. I'm not telling you hit slow. I'm like, I want you to hit like that, and then we started working on like heavy. I'm like, that is not slow. Like, but it's consistent. You're just giving me points left and right. And it finally clicked. And now she's beaten like the number one lady in Austria, number one lady in Russia. She won a tournament over there. She's absolutely crushing it. But it finally, and I thought I was making it clear the whole time, but it finally clicked with her like, oh, he's not trying to turn me into a pusher by making me make more balls in the court. And I think that's what instantly people start doing is when they hear that, like, you don't want me to hit the ball harder, like you're trying to turn me into like a pusher that I don't want to be. Right.
Right.
And they
So
hate to hear that.
right. So two things, like I mentioned earlier, if you pick optimal smart targets, it should free you up because you go, wow, I have so much room to mess up and the ball will still go in the court. That's a
Mm-hmm.
very, very comforting feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is if people are decelerating, you say, hey, let's be consistent. And they start swinging slow. To me, that is a good sign that you actually don't trust your shot and you might have a
Yes.
flaw with it. And that's reality. And we go, we got to work on that. Because if you tell me to make balls, I'm not going to come out and swing scared because I
Right.
know my forehand's pretty solid. But if
Yeah.
my forehand is wide open with the take back, I'm going to be tight. I'm going to swing
Mm-hmm.
tentatively because I go, this doesn't feel great. I'm tentative with my golf swing. My golf swing is not a thing of beauty. So my wife would say that probably makes sense why you get nervous on the tee because she's seen me swing and she's like, it's not that great. So it's two things. It's help yourself relax by picking the smart target, but also if you find yourself decelerating, that might be your subconscious telling you like, hey, we need to work on this shot because you really
Mm-hmm.
don't trust it that much.
Exactly. All right. Next one.
Okay, so just going in there. So that was one general thing. The other thing that I would definitely have someone work on is serve and return.
Mm-hmm.
And can be boring depending on who you are, but like every point starts with that. We know there's a ton of missed returns. So I would make sure, like, I don't know how often anyone out there, especially when they're hitting on their own, like how many returns do you practice? Most people will spend some time on the serve. The return is much more difficult to practice. You might get 10 reps in. Like when you warm up with a friend, ground stroke, volley, overhead serves, you're usually catching the serve and serving back. And then you might play points. There's not really much time dedicated to that. So I just wanted to make sure I snuck that in there. A lot of it would be, how do I eliminate errors? And then probably working on my serve and return more. And what that means to each player is different.
Mm-hmm.
Some people might be, how do I get more free points on my serve? Someone might be, I'm double faulting twice a game. How do I stop that?
Yeah.
That would be player specific. But the last thing that I mentioned that I would do is kind of go I think his name's, I wish I had looked this up. I'm pretty sure it's David Sinclair. He was like the head of British cycling. And his whole philosophy was like, how do I look at everything that we are doing and get 1% better? So it was like they started traveling with their own pillows when they were going on the road because you will sleep 2 more minutes in REM sleep and that will help your body feel better. So we need to make sure we have these types of pillows. And we're going to switch to this type of hand sanitizer because you get sick 3% less, which means we'll get 1 more day of training, which will equal X, Y, and Z. And if you look at everything in your process and you go, I just want to get 1% better at stretching. I want to get 1% better in my warm up when I'm going to the match. I want to get 1% better at charting and watching. And you just look at any area, your diet, your lesson, whatever it is, I'm going to re-grip so my racket feels better in my hand. If I do everything 1% better after 3 months, how can that not make you 2, 3, 4, 5 points better than you were to start?
Okay.
Now,
I've got a challenging question for you though.
Love it.
Because this is what I believe this as well. Everything you're saying, and I'm going to tell my students that as well. But I've also seen the other side of adult recreational tennis where you have this student where you're like, I love this student. Like they do everything I ask them to do. And then, so many weekends they come back heartbroken. They're like, I'm thinking of quitting because I'm doing all this stuff. And I played this person who could they barely look like they can play tennis, and I lost to them. So I, can you overdo that, or how do you do it and make it pay off for you? Because there are so many people at recreational tennis where you play them on the weekend, like, I don't give a damn, but I like seem to never lose. Like, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I can only speak to my experience, how I viewed it, which I think was a very healthy way, which is I invest in things that I care about a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I do it to be the best of whatever. I have no idea if I can have the best podcast in the world, if I could have been the best doubles player in the world. I'm just trying to max out what I have. I'm not doing it for a result. So I don't come back from a tournament heartbroken because I lost. I
Yeah.
might come back heartbroken because I wrote down on a card some controllable things I wanted to do and I didn't do them. And I'm like, oh, you're an idiot. Like, you just, okay, make sure you fix that. But in terms of the result, that one personally didn't get to me because I wasn't playing for the result. I was playing for mastery. The second thing is I told my wife this, and it's almost coming to be true, which is if it was easy, you would get bored. So I'm starting to play paddle, the tennis that's in the racquetball case.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting better. I'm starting to figure it out. In the beginning, I was like, oh, I want to play like 5 days a week. Like, this is crazy. Like, people are hitting overheads. Like, where do I move? What type of shot do I? It was so new and I was so bad. I was like totally intrigued. And now I'm getting better to where I think I know what's going on, and I'm getting better at the shots. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm kind of figuring this out now. And so
Yeah.
now I don't want to play as much.
Right.
And so I look at that struggle as a positive thing. Oh, it wasn't easy at the tournament. Cool. That's why I love this game.
Mm-hmm.
If there were no challenges, I'm sure most of the people listening to this wouldn't enjoy tennis. And they say they would, but if you're a 3-0, I'll go find you a 7-year-old that you can beat 6-0, 6-0, and you tell me how much fun you have playing that match.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Deep down, you want the struggle. So I think when you reframe it that way, it's not this, oh, I can't believe I failed. It's like, oh, sick, this is so hard. I can't wait to see if I can master that.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that mindset is a very healthy way as well.
So is that the pep talk you would give to somebody who came to you and said, you know what, Jonathan, I mean, we're working on all this stuff. You tell me my strokes are really nice. I'm listening to stuff you're saying. I played this person. They don't look like they can play tennis. Like, you should have been there. And everybody was just kind of looking at me, like, feeling sorry for me. And it was so humiliating. Like, what do you tell that student? Because I've heard this a lot.
It's tricky. And again, I'm saying this stuff generically because I don't know the person we're talking about. Number one, I'd say clearly you don't know how to evaluate another player because the person you lost to made balls. So
Yeah.
you might say they're not good, but honestly, they were better than you. So let's stop judging other people because they didn't look us. So that's one. Like, we judge people by how they look, but again,
Mm-hmm.
like, how do you know your assessment of what another player is accurate?
Uh-huh.
Like, a lot of people look at, oh, they're no good. Okay, well, if they're winning, they're clearly doing something well. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter what it looks like. And the
Mm-hmm.
other thing, which I think gives you, I'll speak for me, it gives me strength and confidence to own it, which is I'm probably not as good as I think I am. And I have to own that and then work hard enough to where I will be. So when I play like a golf tournament and I come home and I had to tell my wife, and I just played the City Open and I shot an 81, which for me is a tough score. I was like, you know what? I thought I was better than that, but I'm clearly not because I shot what I shot.
Yeah.
So now I have to go figure out why I did that, which for me was definitely my putting. And I'm like, if I don't like shooting 81s, I have to go work on that. And if I don't like losing to this person who I think doesn't look great, then number one, I have to have it on video. I have to figure out why it happened, and then I will go fix it. There's not going to be a mystery there. I just have to attack it. And if it's challenging, tennis is hard. That's why we don't have 1,000, 5-0s in every city.
Yeah.
It's more 3-0s because tennis is really freaking hard and it's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I would say to them. Maybe we're not as good as we think we are.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. All right. So Marianne says, what is your go-to thing to say to somebody who gets tense and nervous during a match? One of my partners gets in her head and is often mentally tanks during a match. Oof. Oof.
That's a tough one. I mean, traditionally, once you're in a match and you're in that mode, really tough. I mean, you want to do the work before you get on the court. So I haven't had much success in college. I mean, I can't coach juniors, but when someone's like really, really tight out there, generally speaking, it's tough to turn a corner. There's no magic sentence or idea once you find yourself there. That's a very scary thing to be that tight.
Yeah.
I've been there. Obviously, you hear people talk about breathing or putting it in perspective. That can help a little bit. One thing for me in my life, period, it definitely helps me stay relaxed. It helps me stay very, very happy, which I think most people describe me as, is I'm grateful.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, okay, I'm my last tournament in golf, I'm playing horribly. I'm like, man, you know what? The weather is so great. I'm healthy. My back's not hurting anymore. Like, I'm so glad I can play. I'm
Yeah.
not putting. I'm a little tight over this putt. Okay, guess what? That means I'm alive. What a great problem to have that I'm nervous about
Yeah.
a random putt when other
Yeah.
people are nervous about some really big things. So I put it in perspective. I try to have some gratitude, and that usually helps me relax. But everyone's got their own demons, so that probably won't work for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I would just say this to Marianne is I think sometimes when we see our partner kind of imploding, that we go, oh, I better leave them alone. And the more I see y'all play, I don't think you should leave them alone. I think, just maybe you play with this person enough to know how you can get them kind of off that track, whether it's a joke, whether it's this, come on, you got this, whatever it is, or asking them questions. Uh, Roy Emerson, I got to interview him, and the Aussies used to kind of like just kind of joke on each other, like Roy
Mhm.
said the way he would loosen up his partner, be like, well, if you make a return, I won't be mad, like, but they can handle that. Like
Yeah.
you couldn't, maybe another person you couldn't say that to. They'd be like, F you kind of thing. But
Well,
with the
one
Aussies,
other
they kind of like being put on like that,
right,
you
and
know?
one other thing, I stumbled across this on accident a couple times, and then I don't use it that often, but it's kind of a nuclear option. Like if you're out there at the match, is like sometimes if someone's complaining to the, oh, I'm so bad. Not in a sarcastic way. I just kind of agree with them. I'm like, oh yeah, that's really bad. I'm like like you are struggling big time, and a lot of times they actually almost like will fight that a little bit. So like one time I was
Uh-huh.
watching a match, I was watching one of my good players with her dad, and he's like, man, she's so bad at it. She's playing so bad, and I just went, you're right. She's
Uh-huh.
just I go, she's just really bad. Like I don't she's taking only less. She's so bad. He's like, well, she's not that bad.
Uh-huh.
She's doing this well. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's interesting. Like now you're
A
coming to her
takeaway.
defense. Yeah. So I think sometimes, like again, that's a very nuclear option.
Hmm.
But I found that actually when you kind of lean into it, when you're fighting that person, no, you're doing okay. They're gonna dig
Right.
into their position even more.
Yeah.
And I think if you're like, yeah, you're having a tough day. Ooh, this is rough.
Yeah.
They might be like, well, I mean, I'm kind of, they might start defending themselves a little bit. Now
Yeah.
they're thinking about the good things they're doing. Again, that's pretty nuclear, but I have found when I've gone that way, people actually turn it around more than when I keep trying to sell them on why I think they're so good.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because I think that is also a big mistake I see is when someone's really having a tough day, then it can become very patronizing. Like, oh no, you're not, you're doing great. Like I've seen, and it's just like you're coddling them so much to where, I'm sure that they feel it just becomes awkward. So that
Yeah.
also is I agree with you on that. Okay, found Jonathan's content about 3 months ago, and Pete, when I looked up the game 5 years ago, attended one of my camps. Thank you so much. Thank you both. All right, very cool. Thank you, Jay. That is awesome. So we're getting some love here. Long-term fan advice here. I joined late, so sorry. What are some of your favorite ways to coach people to consistency on the court, drills, mindset, etc.? Maybe
So
we'll read.
mindset is easy. Mindset, I'm looking for a target, depends on the skill level. Where you embrace the okay. I'll answer the old
Mhm.
one.
Yeah.
So how high do I need to aim to where I'm not going to miss in the net? For me, at my level, I think I can aim about 2 feet over the net and feel like I'm not going to hit in the net ever.
Hmm.
For a 3-0, that might be 4 feet.
Hmm.
Okay. And then we're going to aim here. So I go, okay, we already have the mindset of being consistent. And then you start out and you go, hey, let's see how long it takes us to make 50 balls. We're never going to have to do that, rally back and forth 50 times in a point. I understand that. But I think you're going to learn real quickly, wow, like I have to hit really slow to make 25. And then you're like, okay, well, how about we make 10 balls in a row? And if you miss, we're going to double the lesson price. Oh, wow. Look how slow you have to hit. Oh, okay. So now
Mm.
you have a very good feel for what you're actually capable of. And most people view themselves as like, I know I can hit that faster. I know I can hit the shot. Yes, not consistently. So that shot you own is usually much slower than people like to admit. And so I like them to understand what that ball is that they own because that will make you more consistent. And again, I think there is strength in being like, man, I'm not as good as I thought I was. I mean, Alcaraz hits his average forehand, like somewhere in the 70s miles per hour, but he can hit it over 100.
Oh, yeah.
So that means he's hitting a lot of them below 70 miles. Like he's playing well within himself most of the time. Then he hits some of the flashier ones. And by the way, sometimes they're winners and sometimes they're like brutal errors. But learning how to dial that back and understand what your actual consistent speed is massive.
Yeah. By the way, I think a lot of like, if there's some coaches listening to this, when you said 10 balls in a row or double the lesson price, they're probably smiling ear to ear. I'm going to use that. And all the people who are like students and players are going, don't ever say that again. Don't let that get, we don't like that one.
Right. But so it's funny though, because I always ask people, I go, look, I'm going to feed you a ball. And if I said, hey, I'll give you, whatever, $1,000 if you make it. Well, how would you hit it?
Yeah.
And most people are like, oh, like really slow and high.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, you can hit it however you want, but clearly that's what you think you need to do to make a ball for sure.
Right.
That should tell you something about what you think about your own forehand.
Right.
It's like, man, I got to tap it in.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I don't think Alcaraz would just bunt a lob. I think he would hit 140 or 50 miles an hour. So yeah, understanding yourself and then picking a smart target is a great way to become consistent.
We got a comment here from Brady.
Oh, God.
Double the lesson price. Oh no.
Yeah. It's just a threat. It never happens. So I actually had one guy, the threat that I was working with was I said, okay, we're just going to stop the lesson. Because he's just a diehard work, like doubling the price. He'd be like, who cares? I just want it's fine. Or you have to run. Oh, that's great. I'll get in shape. But I was like, okay, like, look, if you miss the second serve, we're going to stop the lesson 10 minutes early. And that got him super tight. And I'm like, cool. That's how you're going to feel at 5-6 in the breaker. So now we have one accurate rep here with nerves and we can see what happened, and for him, it was, I usually try to find a way to keep the lesson going without lying, but I want them to feel those nerves so they can see what they actually are capable of doing or where the shot breaks down.
Yeah. Yeah. Got a kind of a technical question here, but this could definitely help people make more shots. Do you have any good little corrective tips for people who get too close to the ball, which is pretty much, so many recreational players do that.
Yeah. I had, there's one I saw, I think it was on Great Base Tennis, but he feeds a ball inside out. So he'd be in the ad court feeding it to your ad court. You're going to hit a runaround forehand.
Yeah.
And you hit it on this, it bounces twice before you hit it. So instead of bouncing once, it bounces twice. So you've got to keep creating space.
Yeah.
Go farther away. I've also had people just to feel what it's like. I'll feed them a ball and I'll be like, I want you to swing and miss because it's too far away.
Yeah.
I just want you to know where that is. That point is too
far. They probably always never miss.
No, they just hit it in the sweet spot.
Yeah.
And you go, no, sorry, that's not what I wanted. You actually hit that ball perfectly. I want you to miss it.
Yeah.
And so that's just one where they go, oh, I overran it and I felt like I was a mile away and I actually shanked it off the top of my frame. I was only like 3 inches too far.
Yeah.
Oh, good feedback for me. Now I know that feeling is actually pretty close to correct. So that first drill with the double bounce, but also just exaggerating the other way is always a good thing to work on something.
All right. This is a good one, and I've got one for this as well. And Rick has been out to Cincinnati a couple of times as well. Go ahead.
So perspective on hitting balls in your strike zone. So I was, what's funny, by the way, like actually in my fantasy football chat, it's all these former tennis players. Is all these guys I grew up with, Oudsma, Kuznetsov, Scoville Jenkins, John Isner.
Nice.
And they're all saying, oh, Stokke's always online defending the pusher. Right? I was serving volley and hit every ball as hard as I could. Like, I'm so far from a pusher in terms of what I did. I wish I had more of those philosophies when I played so I could still be aggressive while being consistent. So that's one thing. When it comes to strike zone, the reason why I brought that up is when I used to play, if you gave me a topspin ball, I like the ball just below my waist. Okay. If I saw that you hit a topspin ball and it was going to be near my strike zone, for me, that was like the biggest green light of all time. I'm going to step up and hammer it. If you gave me a slice, a high ball, it's windy, I feel off balance. The second I knew that I wasn't going to be totally comfortable, in my mind, like you can say roll, push, it was like, I'm just going to make it. This isn't my ball. I'm just going to survive. And I wish my footwork was better so I could get more green lights. And honestly, by senior year in high school, my footwork was good. So I wasn't hitting too many balls outside. But the second I get a backhand up here, I can't hit it fast anymore.
Yeah.
Sucks that I'm lazy or sucks that I didn't read the ball well. So I actually do a drill with my guys where if they get the ball in the strike zone, they say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's a yes, go ahead and swing free. And when it's not a yes, I expect you to hit it 5 feet over the net, medium speed or slow, because it's not in your strike zone. And now you just have to survive it.
Yeah, exactly. I say the same thing. I've been coming up with a saying lately where I say, hit what you can hit and make what you can't hit. And really understanding that. I think that's another thing is people don't understand that. There's too many people playing well, you're a big golf fan, the tin cup philosophy where they're just like, they keep trying, all they had to do is lay up and win the tournament, but they keep driving it at the hole and they get themselves in bigger trouble. And I think, watching pro tennis can really be a benefit, right? Because you can see a lot of great habits, obviously, and we can see how hard they work, but we also have to be more realistic and understand what our hitting box is. Like Carlos Alcaraz can run way off the court and still feel like he's there early enough and feel like it's high percentage to where now that I'm 50, my hitting box, I realize, is much smaller than when I was 25. So I'm like, okay, I'm kind of like leaving my hitting box. Once I take this many steps, even though I'd love to tell everybody I can make that shot, I realize I can't make that anymore. So just make the shot. And the thing is we're not serving it up to Serena Williams or Coco Gauff or Novak Djokovic, but like if we just make it, we're still in the point like 80% of the time, maybe even 90% of the time. So
100%. Are you
yeah,
ready? Are you ready for a hot take on your live stream?
I'm ready for a hot take.
Okay. Just an opinion. There's nothing admirable about someone who goes, I go for my shots. Okay. I like when people are relaxed and trust their shots, but people are like, oh, pushers, they don't try anything. I go for my shots.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. If they go in, that's awesome. If they
Yeah.
go out, I'd be like, you're not the smartest tennis player I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And people judge that. So I really like the distinction of like, you're relaxed and you accelerate and you trust yourself. That's great. If that's how you mean it, that's awesome. If you're someone who's like, hey, I tin cup it and I go for my shot,
Mm-hmm.
that's your choice. It's a recreational sport. If you have fun doing it, that's awesome. But you're certainly not going to win.
Yeah.
Always being the doer. So I always hear people, they'll fill up my comments on Instagram and, oh, well, that person's never going to get better because they don't go for their shots.
Yeah,
like,
it's amazing.
They probably will.
Yeah. It's incredible how much they say, well, that's not real. Or that people are telling me, like, I'll say things like this and then they're like, well, you must not really know 3-5 tennis and 4-0 tennis is much better than it used to be. That's not going to work. Like,
yep.
They come travel to me like every 2 weeks. Like, don't tell me that. Anyway, any corrective tips for hitting the forehand late?
About mid-body instead of in front. So one good drill that I do with some of my players who are late is I actually stand behind them and I toss the ball moving towards the court.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually moving, I don't know how I'm on the stream here, but it's actually moving towards the net. And then they have to move up and hit it. So that ball, if I feed it fast enough, it's always going to be in front of them, right? And they get the feeling of that contact point. I know this sounds bad, but again, you want to over exaggerate. I mean, if you're late every time, I'd say, do you think it's possible that you could swing earlier? Could you whiff because you're so early? Is that possible?
Yeah.
If I gave you $1,000, could you do it?
Yeah.
Of course you could.
Yeah.
So once you give up on making the shot and you go, I am late every time, I'm not going to make that mistake. I'll make a different one. But I've been stuck on this one mistake for 6 months. That mistake is now going to be done. I think you can actually fix it with that mindset much faster than you would think. And I know that sounds super basic, but I've found it works for a lot of my players. Like they'll be, whatever it is, if that forehand's late, I'm like, I'll bet you can't hit it earlier. Like show me once. And they'll do it the first time.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, okay, so it's not that big a deal, right?
Yep. Yep. Good stuff. All right.
Yeah.
This is a good one. And then we'll probably wrap up pretty soon here.
We're timing the split so you're not landing getting stuck. So if you're getting stuck, you're obviously landing too early on the split step, right? Because you don't know where you're going. You hit the ground. They haven't hit yet. So you don't know. Instinctively, you're always going to land right, left to move to your left, or you're going to land left, right to move to your right. That's just instinct. So you want to be in the air when they're striking the ball. So again, I would probably do my slight jump right as their racket is dropping.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's any trick to it. It's just, if we're getting stuck, we know 100% we're too early.
Yes.
And one thing that I used to do too, depending on where I was, like I actually saw a couple of players at the Open do it, is they're taking a bunch of mini split steps. It's not like they're trying to time one perfectly. Like some of the girls were super intense and they're already in position and they were just kind of bouncing. That's another option if you're there. But yeah, if you're getting stuck, we know that you're landing too early.
Yeah. And obviously, if you feel the game's going so fast, then you're probably waiting too long to split step, or
100%.
maybe not split stepping at all. All right, this was really, really good. So again, guys, Jonathan Stokke's going to be giving a great presentation at TennisCon this year. Make sure that you have your free ticket. You can go to tenniscon8.com. You don't have your free ticket, but I bet you most of you guys do already because you're on my email list. A lot of you guys watching this, and tell everybody what you got going on for the next several months, maybe to wrap up the year, or something that people can look forward to next year. We were talking about you're doing something at Indian Wells, not me, but you were talking about Indian Wells. Like, I bet you people will be excited to come train with you.
Yeah. So I did a couple camps this year and they were like so rewarding. I loved them. Great experience. So I'm doing doubles camps out at Indian Wells. I'm doing 2 March 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, 9th, 10th. There is a tournament in Charleston, WTA 500, and I'm doing a doubles camp during the tournament. So basically, I try to do these camps during an event. I did one of the U.S. Open last year, so we can play tennis in the morning. I get them tickets to the pro tournament. They go out and watch. It's kind of like this 2-3 day event. My sponsors give sweet gift bags, but I try to make it an awesome experience. And then leading up to the event, which has been really rewarding, is I'm in touch with all these people. So they're tagging me in Swing Vision. I'm kind of helping them their game along the way so that when we show up to camp, it's like, oh, I know you. Like we've been talking forever. You know what I'm about. I know what your issues are. And then those like 9 to 10 hours are super beneficial. So yeah, I'm doing a couple of those camps. Like I said, Indian Wells, the Charleston Open. I'll definitely do New York City. I'm still doing the Instagram every day. Those are free tips. I hope people listen to the podcast. I mean, I learned something from every single guest. And if I can still learn something, anyone watching this can definitely learn things from these guests. So that's been super rewarding. But yeah, that's basically where I'm at.
Yeah, that's the thing too. He just said something so huge. You know, if you guys ever feel like, am I like overdoing this with the education and everything? I do tennis. This is TennisCon 8. I've been doing online instruction now for, I don't know, 12 years plus. And every time, especially I do TennisCon, where I just keep getting all the presentations come in, and then I look at all of them and do all these live streams. I'm always going, man, this is great. I can't wait to go use this in my next lesson, because there's so, the more you could just think about different ways of explaining things and seeing things. And then some of the stuff too, I actually think about when I am playing. Like, for example, Brent Abel talked about, who's got 21 gold balls. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's like 70.
I've heard the name, yeah.
Unbelievable. 21 gold balls. And he was talking about one of his practice habits that he does is he'll be like, I'll just focus on holding the racket loose, just a loose grip. And I think it was actually about creating space, but that was one of the things that he thought about. And so I took a lesson with Rick Macy that I filmed, and he's like, could see you're a good player. You've been around the block. Like, he built me up. And I'm like, oh, thanks, Rick. He's like, well, I'm saying that all before I like tear you down. I'm like, okay, go for the juggle. He's like, right off the bat, I see 5 things. Number 1's relax. Number 2 is relax. Number 3, 4, and 5 are relax. So I actually focused on holding the racket by the throat and not even on the grip. And I found that, okay, this is actually working. I'm actually hitting looser. So, even that from our live stream this year helped me. So it really does help, guys. Oh, one more thing. Said, Jonathan, any chance to get Jess on a live? So tell me about that. What is she talking about?
She's talking about, I'm assuming she's talking about Pegula.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. She's got WTA finals are in Saudi Arabia this year. Is that right?
I don't know.
I think
probably they're like buying everything, every event.
Yeah, she's back home, and then after that, she'll finally have like off season, which I can't believe she's already there again. The tennis off season is a joke. Yeah, I don't know, man. She's gonna have an off season. She's watching the Bills. They just beat my Jets. I texted her, and she was like, "They're both so bad." But yeah, I don't know what she's got going on, but she's always super gracious with her time. And again, I always say this when anyone asks about her. She is like the most humble, down to earth, top 5 tennis player / billionaire that you could ever meet. I mean, she is the sweetest human, and she works so hard. It is shocking.
Yeah, that is cool. Hey, Marianne, I appreciate you putting them right on the spot like that.
That's great. Perfect. Good pressure there.
That is perfect. Good pressure play.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're at about an hour. Now, remember, if you get your lifetime access pass, not all of these leading up to TennisCon are going to be inside the free version, but I am putting them in the lifetime access pass. In fact, I told my web developer, so if you guys have a lifetime pass, check it out. I think we just put about 10 of our past live streams we've done leading up to TennisCon in there. So if you're watching some of these, goes, I'd like to watch that again. They're inside the lifetime pass. So go check it out because we just posted it, I think, yesterday. Jonathan, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you coming on again.
I can do this all the time, man. I love talking to you.
All right, me too. You guys have a great night out there and be obsessed.